Hello everyone. In today's video I'm going to be responding to a friend's question that I received recently, and I thought I'd just record it for everyone because it would apply to anyone who's in a similar boat where they're just starting to think about investing and setting themselves up for the long term. So I can give kind of the general answer, and then if anyone wants a little more specifics they could always reach out, but let's just dive right into it. Friend from a long time ago. I mean, I've known this guy probably 26 years or something like that. He asks, or he says, "Hey dude, what's up? So my New Year's resolution this year has to do with setting myself up financially. I've been playing around with the idea of setting myself up a long-term and short-term investment. I was thinking long-term, something like ETFs, mutual funds, index funds, or index funds. Trying to figure out which one best fits me. I'm thinking S&P 500 Vanguard Index." So just to kind of set the tone for why I'm making this response for him and for anyone else who wants to watch, is I said, nice. The short, direct answer is yes. The S&P 500 Index through Vanguard is an amazing way to go. That's actually what I do. The slightly longer response is, do you have an account type in mind that you plan on using, like an IRA or a brokerage? If it's an IRA, will you do traditional or Roth? There's so much more I could ask, but let's start with that. And basically his response to that was, well, I don't know. So you've given me a lot to think about. Thanks. I'll go do some more research. And so this is just to help people learn those things that they don't know yet, and help them know what they need to research, how to research it, and just a little bit of a framework that will help hone you in the right direction from the get-go, so you're not just all on your own. So let's see, I kept my recording thing open this whole time. That's fine. This is only like YouTube video number 5, so we're working on getting things ironed out. It's a little janky still. Okay, so I built this little PowerPoint that I think I'll use to help explain the answer. So my friend has asked about index funds. He mentioned ETFs, and I believe mutual funds was the other one. But he's talking about actual investments that you can buy, and my question to him was more about the accounts and the tax treatment. He wants to know what's best for him, what's right for him. And the main question you have to answer for yourself when thinking about long-term investments is what you mean by set yourself up, or what you want the money to do for you. Now, I'm going to kind of do the rest of the video under the assumption that he means retirement funds, something he can live off of when he no longer works or chooses to stop working. But just a counterexample to show you the point is if you have children and you want to help pay for their college, a lot of the accounts I'm going to be talking about for my friend wouldn't apply. The best one for you to use is probably a 529, because that is an account type that is specifically designed for education expenses. So the government will let you store your money there tax-free if you spend it on education for your children. And that's basically how you choose any account type, is what you want to use it for, and you see if there's one available that gives you some kind of tax advantage if you use it for that purpose. So like a 401k is something that most people probably heard of. That's a retirement account that's through your employer, and you can the money that goes in there is not taxed when it goes in, and then it grows, and then when you take it out, then you tax it. An IRA is another account that is a retirement account that you can set up for yourself. It stands for Individual Retirement Account. So that's money where there's a tax advantage applied to it that you can use to boost your savings, basically, and pay less taxes. The 529 we talked about, that's an education one. Just as a side note, another one is a health savings account. That's like a medical cost specific account that has tax benefits. Brokerage, the reason brokerage is in here is if you are looking for setting up an investment that you don't want very many rules restricting you on how you can use it, Maybe you don't want this to be money that you're planning on saving for 30 years. Maybe you're on a 10-year time frame. A brokerage account is the account that doesn't really have many benefits, but because it doesn't have any tax savings, it also has way less rules. So you can put money in and take it out whenever you want, basically, and then the only thing you have to really manage is capital gains tax, which that's a little bit different than these other ones because those are taxed as regular income tax. So those ones, these retirement accounts like a 401k and an IRA, those would show up like, are you in the 12% bracket, the 20% bracket, the 24% bracket? Whereas a brokerage account, the capital gains tax brackets are like 0, 15, and 20 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I know it's 0 and 15 for the first two. But so yeah, the first question is just answering what do you want this money to do for you? And that will help you pick what type of account you want to put the money in based on the benefits and the rules. Now inside of that account you can pick different investment types, and I won't spend a ton of time on this because it sounds like my friend knows what he wants for the most part. He mentioned mutual funds, index funds, and ETFs, and specifically called out the S&P 500, which falls under the index fund category. And for those who don't know, what's nice about index funds is they are called passive funds, where there's not a stockbroker type person sitting behind the scenes moving stuff around trying to say, oh, I'm going to make this deal and we'll beat the market and make more money. But you have to pay that guy. With the index fund, those people don't exist. So you're just trying to track the market. It's really low fees, really low cost, just kind of a set it and forget it type of method. And that's a great place to start, because if you do some research, I won't go into it too deep because otherwise I'll ramble on for like 30 minutes. If you Google things like what percentage of active investors beat the market, or what percentage of active investors fail to beat the market, and start looking at some of those numbers, let's just say I don't do any active investing based on the data that I found when I researched, when I Googled those type of questions. If we need to go more in depth into that, that'll be a separate video probably. But the last question that I asked him, so let's say he's thinking, or you are thinking about retirement style money that you're not going to touch for another couple decades at least, and you just need something to support you for when you stop working. First thing to do would be use your 401k at work, because you hopefully get an employer match. So an employer match is something like, if you put in 10% of your salary, we'll put in an extra 5%. So say someone put in $1,000 a year, their employer would give them another $500, up to a limit of whatever 10% of their salary is. So for someone who, just for easy math, someone who's making $100,000 a year, they would put in $10,000 themselves, and their employer would match it with another $5,000. So it's almost like a bonus, or like almost increased salary. And the only way you get that extra $5,000 from your employer is if you use the 401k. So that's something to look into. But then, once you get the match, you might want funds that are not tied to your employer in any way, because you might be able to get better investment options through your own private account, say with Vanguard or Fidelity or T. Rowe Price or something like that. So then you might move into an IRA. And then when you're doing an IRA, you usually have to ask the question, do you want to do traditional or Roth? So what type of tax treatment do you want? The short answer is, if you're in the same exact tax bracket when you put the money in as when you take the money out, it won't matter. You'll break even. So you have to ask yourself, and it's a hard question because you're trying to predict the future, is my tax bracket higher or lower now than I think it will be when I take the money out? And you rather pay taxes when you're in the lower tax bracket. So if you think you're in the lower bracket now, you'd want to pay taxes now, which means do Roth, because Roth requires that you pay the taxes as the money goes in. If you think you're going to be in a higher tax bracket wait, am I saying this wrong? If you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket later, you would want to do traditional and pay the taxes later when you're in the lower tax bracket. And it's kind of impossible to know unless you have a really good plan. And even if you have a really good plan, you can't really guarantee what's going to happen in the future. There are a few other little notes I'll say about the Roth versus traditional decision. If you start doing traditional, you can convert to a Roth later. If you do a Roth, you don't convert back traditional to traditional. That's not a thing. You can't do that. And the other benefit here is if you do Roth, what's the best way? There's two. One benefit is because you already paid the taxes on the money going in, if you were, say, in an emergency where you need to access more money than you have just in your savings account, like your emergency fund, you could pull the contributions from your Roth account without penalty. You can't take the gains, you can't take the stuff that compounded, but you can take the contributions that you put in because you already paid taxes on that. And then the other difference is with Roth contributions, there's no required minimum distributions. So that's something that hits at age 72, where the government says if you have a bunch of money saved up in a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k, the government says you haven't paid taxes on any of that yet, and we need our tax money, so we're going to force you to take money out to trigger the taxes, so we have more tax revenue, meaning the government. So at age 72, they force you to take money out of your investments just so that they get their taxes. With a Roth, there's no required minimum distributions. So the benefit there is, like, if you want to leave a bunch of money to your kids and kind of keep the government's hands off of it, you might choose Roth. Let's see, am I missing anything? Let's see, so I have my notes. Oh, right, okay, so yeah, we kind of dived into the specifics, but let's go back up general. So you really have to answer the question, what do you want your money to do for you? And depending on what you want it to do, you can pick an account based on what restrictions you might be setting. So if you do any tax advantaged account, there's going to be rules typically related to how old you have to be to access the money. And if you do access the money early, how much of a penalty do you pay? For some of these accounts, there's really specific ways to get around some of that stuff, but I can't speak to that generally, just out to people who might watch this video on YouTube. But if you really want to know, there's ways you can get money out of a tradition, like a 401k, doing something called like a substantially equal periodic payments. I think the form is called a 72T. That's all I'll say about that one, just because it's such a small little niche thing. But the fact that my friend has already talked about, Vanguard, S&P 500 index, there's really not a wrong answer compared to doing nothing. Most of these options, investing in something where you're starting to get that compound interest, is better than letting the money sit in a savings account and not keep up with inflation. And a lot of these accounts, if you change your mind later, you could turn off one account, open a new one based on things you've learned, or if your situation has changed. And even some of the accounts, you can send the money back and forth. You can transfer money sometimes. So for anyone who's listening, don't get too caught up in like analysis paralysis. Chances are, whichever one you pick, it's going to be better than doing nothing. And if you really want to talk about it, I love talking about this kind of stuff, so you can ask me any questions that you have. Yeah, I think we covered it all. So I'm going to stop it there today, I think, and then in the next video we might dive in a little bit deeper about some of the individual investments, the active versus passive, what percentage of investors actually beat the market and things like that. So if you're interested, just drop a comment so I know if that's what you want. But if you want something else, you can drop a comment about that too. We'll try to make try to make content based on what people actually want to know, what they want to hear. So until then, until next time, thanks for watching.